California had a rule that schools cannot be required to notify parents if their kids in school have changed their gender, their pronouns. That's the kind of thing, even though it doesn't affect a lot of people, that makes a lot of people go, well, you know what? That's the party without common sense. Now, if that's your state, how are you?
Well, I just disagree with that. I mean, the law was you would be fired. A teacher would be fired if a teacher did not report or snitch on a kid talking about their gender identity. I just think that was wrong. I think teachers should teach. I don't think they should be required to turn in kids. And by the way,
we're talking about their parents. How can you snitch? The idea of a snitch and a parent to me doesn't compare.
Bill Maher didn't hold back. On Real Time, he went straight at Gavin Newsom, live, raw, and unfiltered, accusing the California governor of overseeing a state in serious decline. From homelessness and taxes to crime and people leaving in droves, Maher put it all on the table. But the real surprise came when Newsom admitted something deeper. Even the Democratic Party, he said, is starting to crack. This wasn't routine political chatter. It was a moment of reckoning that grabbed viewers and set social media on fire. Maher's takedown wasn't random outrage. It sounded like the voice of a fed-up Californian. The Golden State's shine has faded, and the reality of sky-high costs, chaos, and decay is hard to ignore. Once seen as a model of progressive ambition, California now feels more like a warning sign. Under Newsom, homelessness has climbed past 180,000, the highest in the country, even after billions were poured into programs that rarely show results.
Gavin Newsom and Karen Bass have already proven their incompetence and poor leadership during the Los Angeles wildfires. Now, as we experience rampant lawlessness and civil unrest, it's never been more clear they're unable to respond effectively and responsibly during calamity. Whether it's sheer incompetence or outright malevolence, the reality is stark. California's in a state of turmoil, and I ask my fellow Angelinos, why are Gavin Newsom and Karen Bass still in office? How much more of their destructive decision-making masquerading as leadership are we going to tolerate? It's time to take back our community and our state and put the power and the privilege in the hands of competent leaders whose goals are to protect us and the way of life this nation was founded upon.
Cities like Los Angeles, San Francisco, and Oakland have turned into real-life case studies of decline. Major tech names like Tesla, Oracle, and Hewlett-Packard have packed up and moved to Texas and Nevada, with employees and families following close behind. Crime, especially theft and looting, has gotten so bad that stores like Walgreens and Target now lock up basic items like toothpaste or shut their doors completely. Then there's the tax burden. California's 13.3% top income tax, the highest in the country, has sparked frustration, even among liberals. Maher, a longtime Los Angeles resident, has openly mocked the madness of paying luxury-level taxes while swerving around potholes and stepping over tents. For months, he's warned that California's progressive dream has soured into something closer to fantasy. That was the mood when Newsom walked onto the set, ready to defend the blue state model. He pointed to GDP growth, Silicon Valley innovation, and climate leadership. But Maher wasn't buying it.
No, it's stuff like there's a new law. In this, I think we have way too many regulations and laws, as we've talked about. And this one, I think, says if you're a department store with over 500 employees, you have to have a gender-neutral toy department.
Yeah.
Stuff like that.
Yeah, I get it.
So do you think that's silly? Do you think that's a silly thing that we too much government there?
That's an interesting one because the department stores came to us supporting that, and they were the ones making a case for that. They were making us. They're already moving in that direction.
Wanted you to make a law about them?
Well, but they supported the legislation. It wasn't legislation that was enacted, that was initiated from my office, but it was legislation that came up with interesting support.
This wasn't a conservative ambush. It was one liberal holding another liberal accountable. Commentators didn't even call it an interview. They called it an intervention. And when Maher leaned forward and said, "You're running the state that everyone's leaving," the mood changed instantly. No jokes, no warm-up. Just a hard dose of truth. Newsom insisted California still leads in jobs and creativity, brushing off the idea of an exodus as right-wing spin. But Maher cut him off. "This isn't Fox News, Gavin. I'm talking about my friends, my neighbors. They're done paying top dollar for this function." The conversation turned gritty. Maher painted a picture of the tents, the smell, and the danger. When Newsom talked about compassion and reform, especially after dark, Maher's response cut straight through it. "You've been in charge for years. And it's worse. The audience shifted. No clapping, just a low, quiet sense of agreement. Then the focus turned to taxes. Maher broke down the numbers with a surgeon's calm. "You're squeezing the middle class," he said. "People making 80 grand can't afford rent. You tax them like millionaires and give them potholes and crime in return." Newsom tried to push back with the usual buzzwords: reinvestment, equity, infrastructure. But Maher's face said it all. Pure disbelief. How can you brag about GDP when people can't live with dignity? He asked the question that hit hardest. You talk about compassion, but we can't even drive to work without seeing despair on every block. That line cut deep. This wasn't about politics anymore. It was about survival. Can Californians still afford to live, feel safe, and stay sane in the chaos? Newsom said big problems take time, but the numbers spoke louder. Nearly 500,000 residents left between 2022 and 2023. And that's when Maher delivered the finishing blow.
I feel like this country is divided into owners and healers. People who think you can own the other side. Gavin Newsom owned DeSantis. DeSantis destroyed Gavin Newsom. Or people who want to talk and heal. And I feel like the next president's going to be, at least if it comes from this party, the Democratic Party, someone who wants to talk and heal.
It's important. Democrats, we tend to be a little more judgmental than we should be. This notion of cancel culture, you've been living it. You've been on the receiving end of it for years and years and years. That's real. And Democrats need to own up to that. They've got to mature about that.
Every time someone leaves, Maher said, "That's your tax base walking out the door. That's your social programs getting smaller. You can't fund progressive ideals with fewer taxpayers." It was a cold, surgical truth. Newsom pivoted to green energy, tech, and social leadership. Maher nodded slowly, then delivered the final line. "I love all that. I love this state. But when the lights are off and everyone's moved to Austin, who are you leading?" Silence. No applause, just impact. Even loyal Democrats admitted online that Maher's words landed hard because they weren't partisan, they were personal. In that moment, Maher became the voice of the disillusioned Californian, a progressive who still believes in the ideals, but refuses to accept incompetence as the price. What unfolded wasn't just television. It was a mirror held up to power, live and impossible to ignore. When Gavin tried to recover, he fell back on what he knows best: performance. Shoulders squared, smile locked in, he reached for his talking points, but the damage was already done.
It was looking bad there for a while, and we still don't have enough water in the Colorado River and all this stuff. And then whenever I read 80% of the water goes to agriculture. Almonds. No one ever asked you about almonds? Oh, I'm going to ask you about almonds. We grow a boatload of almonds
I'm well
here.
aware.
You know how much water it takes?
Many gallons.
1,900 gallons to grow a pound of almonds. Come on, man. Take on Big Almond.
Take on Big Almond.
His tone had the polish of a campaign ad, measured, proud, and too smooth to feel real. But Maher wasn't buying it. He'd heard this routine before. Newsom's defense leaned on 2 points: that California's problems were proof of its success, and that critics were ignoring its economic power. He rattled off stats: GDP, renewables, venture capital, diversity, as if numbers alone could mask the decay. Maher barely flinched. "That sounds great," he said, "but people don't live off GDP. They live off reality." The line drew a mix of laughs and groans. Newsom smirked, hunting for a comeback that never came. Then Maher cut straight through the spine. "You can't brag about saving the planet when you can't even save San Francisco." It landed like a verdict. The audience's applause was hesitant, half shock, half relief. Maher wasn't coming from the right. He was calling out hypocrisy from the inside. Newsom tried again, insisting the state's chaos was just the growing pains of progress.
I feel like the last couple of years you've purposely picked this fight with the red states. I mean, the DeSantis. Yeah, but I don't want to live in the Civil War country.
I agree with that.
You know what? But you seem like you purposely want to set up this dichotomy between, oh, this is a blue state and that's a red state. And I don't want to live in that country. I like Florida.
I'm with you. And by the way, I like Florida as well. I like all these states. I completely agree. I don't want to have a state of mind that's a constant fight or flight. We've gone through so much. We've been polarized and traumatized. It's been a tough 5-6 years across the globe, not just in this country.
It sounded rehearsed, maybe even heartfelt, but Maher's expression said it all. You've had time. Billions in funding, endless commissions. Where's the result? The camera caught Gavin blink, just long enough for confidence to flicker into defense. Then Maher leaned in. You call it bold leadership. he said. I call it mismanagement with good PR. Gasps rippled through the room. It wasn't just harsh, it was true. Anyone stuck in DMV lines, dodging potholes, or navigating crumbling freeways knew exactly what he meant. Newsom tried humor to ease the tension. You're starting to sound like Sean Hannity, he joked. Maher grinned. No, Sean Hannity roots for your failure. I live here, the crowd erupted. This time with conviction. It wasn't about left or right, it was about honesty. By now, the interview had flipped. Maher wasn't just hosting, he was cross-examining. Newsom's talking points about prosperity bounced off a wall of skepticism built from lived experience. Every Maher interruption hit like a reality check. The governor had walked into a liberal space and found no shield left.
Stuff like that.
Yeah, I get it.
So do you think that's silly? Do you think that's a silly thing that we too much government there?
That's an interesting one because the department stores came to us supporting that, and they were the ones making a case for that. They were making a case they're already moving in that direction.
Wanted you to make a law about them?
Well, but they supported the legislation. It wasn't legislation that was enacted, that was initiated from my office, but it was legislation that came up with interesting support from the industry itself. But I understand how that's exploited, and good people can disagree. But that's not something we woke up and said, this is a top priority for the state, when we know the top priorities are homelessness, housing, the issues of crime, quality of life, and issues related to regulation and taxes.
He came on to restore California's image. Instead, he became the face of its unraveling. A polished defendant facing a relentless prosecutor. This was the breaking point. Maher zeroed in on the state's rawest wound, homelessness. You can talk all you want about tech growth, he said, but people are stepping over human misery every day. He pointed to billions spent on programs like HomeKey, meant to convert hotels into shelters. We keep hearing about new initiatives, he said, but we keep seeing the same tents. Newsom repeated familiar excuses: courts, inflation, mental health, bureaucracy, everything but accountability. Maher stopped him cold. You're the governor. If California can't fix homelessness with its budget, who can? The silence was heavy. Newsom tried moral footing, insisting California chose compassion over cruelty. Maher didn't flinch. Compassion isn't letting people rot on sidewalks, it's results. The room seemed to agree quietly, completely. Even progressives know that kindness without competence is failure. Then came public safety. Maher brought up viral robberies, stores looted in daylight, and small businesses fleeing downtowns. You can't act like this is perception, he said. It's daily life. Newsom countered with statistics, claiming crime fluctuates everywhere. Maher shot back, it's not about stats, it's about trust. You've lost it. He told of a friend who moved her business after 3 break-ins. She pays taxes, follows the rules, and still gets treated like the problem. It landed hard. Newsom nodded, humbled, before defaulting to his familiar line. We're investing in solutions, and I'm not giving up on the state I love. It sounded presidential, measured, and optimistic, but tone deaf. Maher wasn't asking for vision, he was asking for reality. The world you're describing doesn't match what Californians live through. They don't see transformation, they see tents. That line hit like thunder. Viewers online said it finally said what politicians and pundits have been too afraid to voice. California's progressive glow has become a mask for dysfunction. Maybe that's why the clip went viral. It wasn't outrage, it was exhaustion. People aren't mad at ideals, they're furious at incompetence dressed up as virtue. The homelessness, empty storefronts, and mass exodus, they aren't isolated crises. They're signs of trust collapsing. Californians don't want promises, they want proof. Maher said it directly to the one man who couldn't sidestep it. When the cameras cut to commercial, Newsom's smile had tightened into a strain. He'd held his composure, yes, but his confidence was cracked. The policies he called progress had just been redefined as failure, live, before millions by one of his own allies. And that's why it mattered. This wasn't a partisan ambush. Maher isn't a conservative bomb thrower chasing headlines. He's a lifelong liberal who has watched his movement lose touch with reality. When someone like him dismantles a Democratic favorite on air, it's not entertainment, it's a warning. Newsom walked in as a rising star, a polished West Coast contender many in Washington see as presidential material. But Maher's interrogation stripped away the polish and asked the one question Democrats fear most. If you can't fix California, how can you fix America? The aftermath proved the impact. Clips flooded social media. Conservatives called it karma. Liberals called it necessary. Independents, the deciding middle, just nodded. That alone told the story. The political center isn't moved by partisanship anymore. It craves honesty. California should be the progressive success story. Global economy, cultural influence, and climate leadership. Instead, it's a paradox. The richest state with the worst poverty. The most idealistic with the deepest inequality. Maher's takedown wasn't personal. It was symbolic. A mirror held up to the widening gap between rhetoric and reality in the Democratic brand. The shockwaves hit everywhere. Think tanks, newsrooms, and campaign offices all understood the message. Slogans don't solve problems. Virtue signaling can't replace competence. Leadership either delivers results or loses the people it claims to serve. Maher captured that truth without shouting, and that calm precision is why the moment stuck. By the week's end, headlines wondered if he had ended Newsom's 2028 chances. Maybe not, but he revealed something far more dangerous: the party's core weakness, governing by moral posture instead of measurable progress. And when that critique comes from your own side, it's not opposition, it's intervention. The Maher-Newsom showdown will be remembered as one of those rare political TV moments that cut across ideology, not because of noise, but because honesty finally broke through performance. It wasn't a partisan rant, it was an awakening. The message was clear: if California is the model is broken. Maher's confrontation didn't just humble a governor, it sparked a national conversation. For years, California was the progressive North Star, the dream blueprint. Maher dragged that myth into the light, exposing the moral contradiction of a state that preaches compassion while producing chaos. The episode went viral because Maher said aloud what millions whisper every day: California's experiment isn't leading anymore, it's unraveling. Newsom's forced smile captured more than discomfort. It marked a fracture inside American liberalism itself. The age of excusing failure with lofty language may finally be ending. Maher's calm fury carried a bigger message. Betrayal from within hits harder than attacks from outside. He wasn't throwing bombs, he was demanding competence. That's why it resonated. What aired as late-night talk landed as a political indictment. For Newsom, it was a reality check no charm could fix. For viewers, it was a breath of honesty. Someone finally said what everyone else was thinking, without switching teams. Maher didn't confront Gavin Newsom for ratings. He did it to remind everyone watching: progress doesn't need slogans, it needs truth. And if you want more of that truth, stay tuned. The conversation has only just begun.